So for this one here, we're going to do a little bit of being in Unreal for just a small amount of time, and then we're going to be jumping over to Maya to clean up our idle rifle animation, and I'm going to make the animation work for a rifle prop that I've made to replace this prototype weapons file folder that I have, because I know not everybody has this asset pack, but that way I can also take that prop that I made, the weapon prop, and I can take the animation too and provide it to you guys on my site and on my resources page, so you guys have something you can use. So one of the things I'm going to go over a little bit too is I'm going to talk a little bit about the skeletal setup for this guy as well, for when it comes to adding bones and changing bones out as well. So again, I'm just going to continue on here like as if we were working, but I'm also going to explain things as I go. So for our character, I want to fix up his idle animation. So I know in my mannequin folder, which I'm probably going to rename to characters folder, I can come over to my animations, and I know I have an animation for it called the idle rifle copy. I'm not seeing it here, so let me jump back one folder and see if it's in this. Yeah, see, it's in my mesh folder, so I'm going to reorganize this a bit too, because I'm not liking this setup as well. So again, to get out your animations, you can just right click on it, asset actions, export, and it'll export it out as an FBX file, so it has all that bone data for when it's moving around, and it'll also take the skeletal mesh if it'll take the mesh along with it that was bound to the skeleton, in case you might not in case you are loading up a scene that doesn't already have a character in it, and I'll explain that in just a second here. So what I want to do is I want to jump into Maya, and I want to load up that animation so I can edit it. So I'm going to give a really brief rundown on the art tool. I'm not going to get in depth with it. I've already have videos out for the Animation Rigging Toolkit, as well as Jeremy Ernst, which he's explained it tons. So if you have access to Maya, you're one step in there, but the other step is just getting the Animation Rigging Toolkit set up. It's a free toolkit that comes with Unreal. An example of where it can be found, since it's still really kind of blows my mind, like how many people don't really know where to find it. If you, let's say, pull up the launcher here, and I'm just going to do right click and show in folder on one of my project files, so the one that we're working on. And if I come to the C drive, I should have just gone to C drive in the beginning, program files, excuse me, and we go to Epic Games, we have the different versions of the launchers that we had installed or do. Like, I don't have 4.6 or 4.7 anymore, nor do I have 4.8. So if I'm going in 4.10 here, I can go to the engine, extras, animation rigging tools. So this right here is where you'll find all that cool little stuff, and all it really is just one little Python script. That's pretty much that. And then all you have to do in Maya is just connect the dots to say, hey, this is where my Animation Rigging Toolkit exists in this engine version. So you can, let's say, like if I wasn't working in 4.10, or if I am working in 4.10, I could still use an animation pack that came in 4.6 or earlier. So it's that little tidbit there. And also, one of the things is I'm just say, like, for a character rig creator, if I were to create a character, I've already made a template. And what I did with my template here is basically all you're doing in the beginning of this is you're specifying what bones do you want to make for this character. The template I had saved out was basically had the IK, FK, hand and feet. And what I did was I looked at the skeletal mannequin character in here, and going into his skeletal menu, we can see the build of his skeleton. And at the bottom here we have his foot, IKs, and FKs, and those are attached to the root of the skeleton. So if I were to collapse everything after, not pelvis, but root, you'll see that these are connected, and I have those in my character. So what we can do is, if we wanted to say for this guy, we wanted to add some actual, like, let's say additional bones, like we wanted to add like a giant ponytail, or certain bones that hang off his waist, or a bone for like his backpack so it moves up and down, or he can take off his backpack, or things like that. Whenever you add a bone like that, or anything of that matter, you always want to add it at the end of a bone chain if you don't want to put it in between a bone chain. So when this character is brought in, everything that is on this character is established as this is the SK mannequin skeleton. If you were to put a bone in between spine bone 2 and spine bone 3, then when you were to import that new character with that extra bone between those two spines, Unreal's not going to recognize that as this existing character. What it's going to have to do is make a new skeleton, and then you'll have that extra bone in there. But because if you were to add bones at the end of a bone chain, for instance, where we added a bone after his head, or added a bone after, I don't know, the end of his fingers, or something like that, so then it would be looked at as additive bones, and that way Unreal would recognize it and saying, oh, you just added some additional bones to this guy because you still got that core structure set up. So that's just one little note I wanted to add in there as well. So back in Maya, what I ended up doing was when I created that template, I'm just going to build that character really quick here. For this joint mover setup, what I did was, as you're moving all your bone positions around for where you want to set up your joints to go to, I ended up importing in that skeletal character into this scene, and I ended up just taking the pivot points of where the bone template would be, and I matched it to the SK mannequin skeleton that's in Unreal. So that way when I import animations, it'll almost be like a one-to-one match, but pretty close. And I have a template saved out for that. So if I load up that template, this is actually the pretty close representation of that template. And again, these are just text documents, so I can definitely put a file together for that, and I can see if I can provide it as well in case you guys are using the Animation Rigging Toolkit. So from that, you do a deformation setup, which would you'd skin it would then create your bones for you, and then you would just skin your mesh to those bones or bind it, and then you would publish your character into your own little library in here. So I'm going to do a new scene. I'm going to clear it out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load in that character since I've already got that character made. So I'll add a character for animation, and in my sample folder I have my mesh mannequin. So I can add this guy in. And the cool thing is while you're in here animating too, I'm going to move this guy back so when I show you guys the other one, he's not right on top of him. Let's say I'm animating this guy and I needed to figure out a way like, oh, I need him to animate where like he punches the dude in the face and the guy just reacts or something like that, and you want to hand animate all that stuff. It would be difficult somewhat. Like before, I always used to do it where I would animate it, I would export that animation, and then I would bring a new scene in, and then I would import that other animation in there, so the animation was always timed to that, and it would never be a one-to-one match because what if the guy's like arm got in the way or something like that. Well, what's nice is you can then, in the Animation Rigging Toolkit, just add another character for animation. You can add a different one, or you can choose to add the same one. So it's going to build another character for us. And there's our second character that we can begin animating, so we can make this guy, fight him or whatever. I'm being really, really bad about this, but I'm just trying to get a point across. Where we can animate this guy and have him move and react accordingly. They both have their own rigs. They won't interfere with each other, and it's easy enough to select them because though these names are similar, if I were to select this first mannequin and I selected some kind of joint selection, or not joint but a control selection on here, it'll select the actual portrait piece that I have that's associated with that rig. Just like if I went to mannequin 1 and say I selected the elbow control, or sorry, the hand control, then it would be associated for that skeleton for the other guy. So just a really quick note on that. It would be very helpful for animating multiple characters in a scene like this. So let's add our character for animation. Oh, go away. Add the character for animation. Do my sample guy again. I'll add him and close. Okay, so now that the character's in here, I can then do the import animation button over here. I'll select the import method of both, and I'll solve the foot roll as well. So that way I can do my corrections to the animation that I need based on forward kinematics and inverse kinematics on this entire rig. And then if you had multiple characters in your scene again, just like this before, you would say what character do you want to import your animation to. let's import our idle rifle iron sights copy, select that animation, and then you'd import and you'd see him start moving at first, and then it would have to go through this whole process of where it would match all that animation to this character. Well, the good thing is that's already been done over here on the other Maya scene that I had floating around in the background. So now here's our character, and you'll see like his knees kind of pop a little bit and his elbows are moving into place. So the cool thing is now that I have a base to start with, I want to bring in a prop so I can actually line this guy's hands up, and this is how I'll animate a lot of weapons and things like that for characters. So what I'll do is I'll do a import, and hopefully this will import, but I'm gonna jump over to a file I have with all my little props and stuff in it that I've made, and let's do a rifle prop download. That was a test download I had done, and it didn't bring it in. Okay, it's because it's a skeletal mesh, so it didn't want to bring it into here because it's reading one already. So what I'll do for that is I do believe I have another rifle prop saved out, so I'm gonna go import that one. What I did was, because that file was having some trouble, I just ended up taking the weapon and I just turned it into an OBJ. So this is just a static mesh. Has no skeleton or anything like that. I'm going to rotate this guy out about -90 and freeze transform, so now it's on the 0. And now, one more thing I like to do for whenever I animate with props is I'll make a little ring around it, so it's kind of like my handler. And I'll make this about the length of the weapon. Make it down some so it's not completely in the way. Alright, and then I'll take this guy and I will parent him to that object there. Before I do that, I kind of messed up. Let me take the pivot point here, hit insert, I'm going to drag that to the middle, and I'll freeze transforms again, delete history, take this thing, let's parent that one more time. And let's move our rifle weapon prop up to where he's going to be hanging on to it, so we have a better marker for how this guy is going to need to animate with his weapon. Now his hands are a little bit strange, but I haven't really animated with this guy quite yet. About to find out. I don't know why exactly his arm is all dark like that, but it actually came in pretty well. So that saves us a lot of trouble. Okay. So now that we actually have a weapon prop to animate with, what I like to do is I tend to take this hand here and I'll make it so that this weapon is actually like gonna always follow this arm, or the dominant arm, and then I have this one here follow the actual prop, so that way the front of the hand always kind of follows with it. So from that, let's grab, I believe it's this hand here, and secondary selecting the actual curve that we made, and with the not polygons, animation, just go to constrain, and under my parent settings I want to maintain offset. I want translate and rotate to be followed, so let's do that. Alright, so that didn't work, so maintain offset one more time. There we go, so the weapon follows the hand. Now we got to do it the other way around, where we actually select the weapon prop, select that arm, hit apply, and now if we're moving our arm around, he follows with it, and he'll move like he should. So as you may have noticed, there was actually a couple pauses as I was kind of setting this guy up as well. But more or less this last pause was because I didn't really go through and record the process of me adjusting all of his character controls and getting all his positions right for him. I can always do other videos if you guys request it for that, if you'd like to see how I kind of go through animating a character. But again, for any major adjustments, so we have our original here, I just added any adjustments that I did, I put onto a secondary layer, and that kind of gave it to me a little bit better look. So I know because I animated it on a much longer weapon than what's in the actual editor right now, that his hand holding positions might be a little bit different, and his spine bones at this point, or his yeah, have been faced forward a lot more. So let's move this guy back over to the Unreal Engine and let's get his new animation plugged in and take a look at what it's doing. So as before, when we play our character, I'm just going to run one character at this time since I don't really need two. I'm just doing one individual. As we were aiming, our guy was kind of canting left and right and backwards. So if we come in now, hopefully that's been fixed. So one of the things I also kind of noticed too is if you're going to import your character, or sorry, not your character, but your new animation, at times, here's our animation we currently have. His body's facing forward and everything. If I go to re-import it, you'll see it made some adjustments there, but sometimes this adjustment, he might, yeah, like right there, he's popping. It's because sometimes when it re-imports, not all the data is like the data might kind of fight itself, the animation is. So sometimes what I've kind of found is like I went to like the main file folder here. I just did an import of it where I saved it out on the desktop. And I will import it into the skeleton that we're currently using, which is this one here. Again, we can find the skeleton looking at its skeletal path. And this is actually in the mannequin folder that we're using. So I'm going to select this skeleton. I will import the exported time I gave out. And I'm just going to import that. And now we have this animation, which is close to the same thing we were just having, but again, this is the one that's directly out of the editor that we just got done doing. And if you notice, there's no pop at the end of that animation when it comes back to the beginning. So let's take this animation file and let's plug it into his graph. So I got to pull up his graph here. Let's go over to the mesh, and I'll find his anim blueprint. I'm going to drag it over here and get it in windowed mode so I can just drag the animation directly into his into the anim graph here. So if I come into the content browser, this is our new animation we just got done doing and fixing. And I'm just going to plug that into that spot so it's overriding this one. So I'll compile it, and if I play it now, we'll see how our new animation looks. He's actually aiming a lot more. He's actually looks a lot more straightforward than before, which is pretty good. Now, one thing you'll notice though, if I actually bring up another character, having made up those adjustments to it, when I say like run over here with this guy, let's get up right up in the edge. While I'm aiming, you'll notice he looks all right from the front. If you go towards the back, now his back is kind of stretched. Yes, this can be a problem, but I guess it really depends on the type of character you're using. I'm working on a character right now to replace this guy because this is a mannequin character. He's just kind of like your prototype guy to stand in place until you get your characters in. Again, also, having done this method here is not the only way. There's so many different ways to do this and approach it at your own will. I'm just kind of here to kind of show different examples of setting up characters and kind of getting the system in place and running and working. So maybe over time this might change. It's probably going to change depending on the different weapons we end up implementing. We might have large weapons, longer weapons, weapons that are actually are standard, like close grip and far grip. So like this weapon right here is actually a far grip, and if you notice, like his weapon is definitely holding it a lot further than before. So the next video we're going to end up taking these weapons and we will replace them. But for now, let's go ahead and actually get rid of our old animation that we have and get this new one in the correct file. And I think we'll stop it from there. So I'll do a little bit of monologuing here while I'm doing this. So I did have Christmas vacation, came back, and I ended up catching a cold, lost my voice, and got it back again. So now I'm back, I'm getting everything caught up again. So here's our old animation. I'm going to delete this. It's going to come up with a pending delete because it's being referenced within that animation blueprint. It's not connected to anything, so we should be able to get rid of it. It should be fine. Now doing that can give you problems every once in a while. Just be mindful of that. Going to take this new animation we have here, and I'm just going to push it down to the mesh folder. This folder is going to need to be reorganized. So when we go to start moving all of our weapons around, we're going to reorganize these files a bit more, and that's going to be safe from there. So hopefully I'll be able to take this project and I'll be able to post what I have on it, so I'll have nothing that's being redistributed or getting in any trouble for that. So That'll be an aid for a lot of you guys out there. Alright, so let's stop it there and we'll move on to the next one of cleaning up this entire folder.